Be'ez Hashem Yisborach, we begin Perek Chamisha, the 5th chapter in the Rambam's Hilchos, Tefilah, the laws of prayer in the Sefer Hava, the book of love. We should continue the theme of the previous Perek, which they would discuss 5 things that are ma'akiv, that are critical. In contrast, in this Perek, we discuss certain things that are the initial, ideal way of davening. Rambam gives halacha alf regarding discussing the general categories that we're going to discuss. There's 8 things that the one who's davening is supposed to be careful and to do them. But if it was an oppressing situation, or beyond his control, or you violate and did not do these things, they're not critical, as we said regarding the previous parak. And they are amida standing, towards the base of Mikdash, preparing the body, preparing the clothing, preparing the place, regarding the equaling of the voice, regarding bowing, and regarding prostrating. As Rambam begins halacha beis, discussing the first item of amida, regarding standing. Says Rambam Ketzad, what is that? So once davening Shmoneh Esrei should only be doing standing. If he was sitting on a boat, or by gola on a wagon, if he could stand, he should stand. If not, then he should sit in his place and daven. A sick person, even if he's laying on his side, as long as he's stipulating that he could focus his thoughts. So if someone's thirsty or hungry, they're included in sick people. That is, if he can focus his thoughts, then Yispal can daven. But if not, Al Yispal shouldn't daven. Not until he eats and he drinks. If someone's riding on the animal, even actually if he has someone who could hold this animal, should not come down from his animal to stand and daven, because if he's going to come down, the fact that he's being held up is actually going to make him more disturbed. Rather, he should sit in his place and daven, that his thoughts should be focused and settled when he davens. Regarding the next item of Neichach HaMikdash, facing towards the temple, Ketzad household. So if someone was out of Eretz Yisrael, he faces towards the land of Israel and he davens. If he's in Eretz Yisrael itself, he faces his face towards Yerushalayim. If he's in Yerushalayim, just gets more fine-tuned as you're going in that general direction. He faces towards the base of Mikdash. If he's in the temple, and then he faces his face towards the holiest of holies. A blind person, or if someone doesn't know how to direct what direction he's facing, or if Amahal was going on a boat, then he should just focus his heart towards the divine presence and daven, even though he might not be facing towards the base of Mikdash. Halacha, the next item, tikkun aguf, preparing the body, Ketzad household. So when he's standing for davening, he has to focus his feet that they should be side by side. So you're preparing your body. His eyes should be given towards lower down. Kilo mabit l'artz, as if he's looking at the ground. His heart should be open towards what's above him. Kilo emid b'shamayim, as if he's standing in heaven. And he should put his hands on his chest, on his heart, kefusin, that are bound, hayemanas alasmolis, the right hand over the left hand. Rabbi, that's clasping his hands, he's standing like a servant in front of his master. With fear, with awe, with trepidation. And he should not put his hands on his hips. That's very callous in the way of standing in front of Hashem. Halacha, the next item, tikkun hamabushim, preparing one's clothing. Ketzad household. So masakar mabush of tchila, a person should first prepare his clothing. Umitzayin atzmoy, umahader, and he should stand out and he should dress himself up. Shlomo says the pasuk in Tefilah, "Mishtach Hashem, bow to Hashem, bahadras kodesh," in a holy glory, and that is in a beautiful way of dressing. The loyamed b'tefillah b'pundasa, he shouldn't stand for his davening in his undershirt, not with his bare-headed, not with barefoot. If the way of that people of that place, that they don't stand in front of great people, only if they're wearing shoes, then it's a problem not wearing the shoes. Now, in all places, you shouldn't be holding tefillin in your hand, or the sefer Torah in his arm, and daven. The reason they should leave it to him because his thoughts are going to be perturbed. He doesn't want to drop these holy items. So they shouldn't hold on to vessels or monies in his hands, because again, you don't want to drop these things, but it's taking away your attention from your tefillah. But a person could daven v'lulav b'yadai, and he could be holding his lulav in his hand during the days of Sukkot, because it's the mitzvah of the day, and it's not going to distract him from the tefillah. Hayamasoi al roishai. If let's say he had a load on his head, begizim on tefillah, and it's time to daven. So if the load was not so heavy, it was less than 4 kav, a certain measurement, he could throw it over his back, and he could be wearing it, and he could be davening at the same time. But if it was 4 kav, then he's got to put it down on the ground, and then he could daven. The way of the sages and their students, they only daven when they're cloaked in a talus. Continue with the next item, tikkun hamokam, preparing the place. Kate said, how so? So yamid b'mokam namach, a person should stand in a low place. He should turn his face towards the wall. He has to open up windows, or entryways, facing towards Yerushalayim. That he should daven towards them. Shlomo says the pasuk in Daniel, windows were opened for him, in his upper story, neged Yerushalayim, in his loft, facing towards Yerushalayim. So Talmud should always have a permanent place where he davens. Shouldn't daven in a dilapidated building. Is not behind the shul. Is only if he's facing towards the shul. He's not a sit on the side of someone who's standing in prayer, to pass in front of him until he distances himself a distance of 4 amas. You shouldn't stand in an elevated platform of 3 tefachim, of 3 handbreadths height, or more than that, bispal and daven. Not on a bed, not on a chair, not on a bench, not on a chair. Now, but if it was an elevated structure, so, but if it was 4 amas square, which is the measurement of what a house is, so then it's like an upper story, and you're allowed to daven even though it's above the ground. So let's say we're surrounded with walls from all sides, even though it wasn't 4 amas squared, it was less than that, you're allowed to daven in it, because the height is not recognizable, because it's its own area, it's its own cubicle, and therefore that wouldn't be a problem. Regarding the workers, the craftsmen, that they're doing their work on the top of a tree, or on the top of a row of bricks, or the top of a wall. It came time to daven. They should come down and daven, and then they go back to their work, because you can't really focus your tefillah when you're standing because of the fear that you might fall. But if it's top of an olive tree, or the top of a fig tree, then and then they could daven in their place. It's a great effort to come down, and also because there's so many branches, it's not as concerning to fall as a regular tree. What do they daven? So if these workers weren't getting paid any actual money, they were actually working for food, and they were getting just a meal out of it. So mispal and shalish tefillah, so they could daven all 3 prayers. Shal tasha esrei brachas of the full shemaine esrei, the 19 brachas, because we're not concerned that now the employer is losing out because they don't get paid so much. So they could take the time out to come down and to daven the whole shemaine esrei. But if they were getting paid for their wages for their work, then mispal havinenu, then they have to daven this abridged shemaine esrei, this abridged tefillah of havinenu, which was brought in the second parak halacha gimel. But either way, any type of a worker in Yud Lav Ne'ateva should not be davening for the Amid. They don't do Birkas Kohanim as Kohanim, because that's going to take too much time taking away from their employer. Halacha test, the next item of Hashvas HaKoil. Ideally, one should have equalized voice. Kate said, what's that? So it shouldn't amplify his voice when he's davening. And so he shouldn't daven just in his heart, which is not enunciating it, so not too loud, not too low. And rather he should enunciate the words with his lips, and he should hear it with his ears as a whisper. So when he's davening Shemini Esrei, you don't want to scream it. At the same time, you have to actually say it. It shouldn't be like you're not saying any sound at all. But his voice shouldn't be heard. Only if he was ill, or he can't focus until he says it out loud. Then is permitted, as long as he's not with a minion. Because then they're going to be disturbed from his voice. But when you're by yourself, even though ideally you do it balachash, then you can do it out loud. Halacha Yud, the next item, kriya, regarding bowing. So Kate said, how so? So when someone's davening Shemini Esrei, he bows 5 bows at every single Shemini Esrei. that is bebracha Rishon, the first bracha of Magen Avram, you have Betchil B'Sayif, in the beginning when you say Baruch Hashem, at the end when you say Baruch Hashem, that first bracha. By the bracha Maidim, Betchil B'Sayif, when you say Maidim, and then at the end, Baruch Hashem, that's 4. When you finish the Shemoneh Esrei, Kredeya, so you bow, and you take 3 steps backwards, as he's bowing, and he gives greetings as a leaving from Hashem to his left, and then to his right. Then he lifts up his head from his bowing. Now, when he bows these 4 bowings in the Shemoneh Esrei, he bows by the word Baruch, so we kneel and then we bow. When he stands up straight, he stands up straight by Hashem's name. But when we say this, that it's only 4/5 times, is beheaded by a regular person. Of a Kohen Gadol, but by the high priest, he actually bows down in the beginning and the end of every single bracha. The Melch, the king, once he bowed down by the first bracha, he does not lift up his head until he finishes his whole davening, because the whole point of the bowing is the self-abnegation, which the greater person is, the more he has to humble himself. So Kohen Gadol is more, and the Melech is even more than that, and therefore his bowing is more than everyone else. Now, as a clarification, why when he takes 3 steps back after the Shemoneh Esrei does he take leave by saying shalom to his left first? The reason is the person's left is the right of the person or entity that he's facing. In other words, when he's standing in front of the king, he first gives the greeting to the right of the king, which the Melech Amlochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So first to his left, which is Hashem's right, and then to the left of the king. And they established that a person should take leave from his prayer, the way a person takes leave from the king. All these bowings, the person has to bend down until all the vertebrae in the spine stick out in his back. He should make himself like a rainbow, like bent over. Now, if he bends over a little bit and it pains him, and it's visible that he's bowing as much as he's able to, then doesn't have to be concerned, and that can be enough. The last one, prostrating, how so? So after he lifts up his head from the 5th bowing, which is when he takes the 3 steps back, he sits on the ground, and he falls on his face on the ground, and he supplicates with all the supplications that he wants to, which that's what we call tachna in the Tefilah Sapayim. Now, kriya amura b'chamakim, when we always talk about bowing, is al brikayim, are on the knees. Kida is a different type, is alapayim, which a person stands straight up and he only tilts his face and his face goes onto the ground without being on his knees. Shtachavaya, which we're talking about right now, prostrating is a pisha darmaglam, that's stretching out his hands and his feet, achanim tzmutal upon the bar, so that he's totally laying flat on the ground with his face on the earth. So this thing that we're discussing, when he falls on his face after davening, yesh mishu oisa kida. Now there are those who do this kida, which is this type of a bow from the waist down and the face goes onto the ground. So it's in the Tefilah Sapayim. But yesh mishu oisa shtachavaya. There are those who do prostrating, totally flat on the ground. Now, but it's forbidden to do this prostrating on stones, only in the temple. Like we explained the laws of idolatry in Perek Vav Halacha Zayin. Now, a distinguished personality is not allowed to fall on his face, this tachnon, unless he knows that he's righteous by himself, like the righteous Yeshua ben Nun. But he is allowed to tilt his face a little bit, and he does not push his face into the ground. And it's permitted for a person to daven in one place, and to do falling on the face somewhere else. Let's say he's davening with a stone, and he wants to go where there's no stone, then he's allowed to do that. Now, it's a widespread custom amongst all the Jewish people. We don't do this falling on the face, but Shabbos and Shabbos, Meyadim and Yom Tovim, Rosh Hashanah, and Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh, and Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, Purim, not mincha of right before Shabbos, and not the mincha of right before of Yom Tov, because all these are celebrated times, and you don't want to increase supplications at these times. And neither Ma'ariv of every single day. The reason for that is because the Tefilah Sapayim is a symbol of judgment, and at nighttime, where it's a total time of judgment, which would be too much judgment. But the yesh yichidim shenoifim al paneim ba'arbus, there are individuals that they do fall on their face even by Ma'ariv. Yom Kippurim Bolvad, now only by Yom Kippurim, they fall on their face by every single prayer. It's a day of supplication and of request and of fasting, and therefore that would be the one that they would do by all the different tefillahs, which would be specifically in Yom Kippurim.